Hi, it's Penny here. So the other day I went through all my 2023 anticipated releases and talked about whether I actually read them and whether I actually liked them. Today what I thought I would do is go through all the 2023 releases that I read that I didn't have on that anticipated releases list and see whether they should have been on that list. Like, was I anticipating the wrong things in some cases? And like, is there anything I could learn to improve my anticipated releases in the future? So I have 17 books on this list and I'm going to go through them from lowest rated to highest rated. The first ones are 2-star books, and to be honest, my question here is not really why wasn't I anticipating them, but more why did I read them at all? So firstly, we have Under the Smoke-Strewn Sky by Shawnee Maguire, or by A. Deborah Baker, because this is the last book in the, I forget the name of the series, but I'll put it somewhere. So the concept of this series is really amazing. Basically, in Shawnee Maguire's book Middle Game, there is an alchemist who has written some children's books in order to get certain ideas into like the mainstream consciousness, which will then enable her to do certain alchemy. And then Shawnee Maguire actually wrote those books, but under the pen name of the alchemist from Middle Game. I love the concept, and I did really like the first book, and then it was all downhill from there, unfortunately. So having not really liked the second and third books, I didn't really expect to like the fourth book, and like, it frustrates me because the series had so much potential and I just think it was all told in the wrong way, or at least not in a way that I enjoyed. And I know a lot of people didn't enjoy this as much as they were hoping, so it's not just me. I guess I'm glad that I finished the series. Am I? I don't know. Anyway, I purposefully didn't put that on my anticipated releases even though I knew it was coming out, so that was a good decision. Then we have A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. This is the prequel to The Priory of the Orange Tree, also by Samantha Shannon. It's kind of set in this world where somewhat regularly these dragons come back into the world and things have to be done to deal with them. There's kind of good dragons and bad dragons. There's some interesting things about the world, and I almost liked Priory. I just felt like it was written in a way that really rushed through the world building and then also rushed through the climax of the story. Anyway, I wasn't even going to read the prequel, and then accidentally, in a moment of weakness, I decided to try it, and I shouldn't have. When will I learn that lesson? Who knows? It's a lesson I've been trying to learn for a long time. Okay, then we have Paris, the Memoir by Paris Hilton, and after I read this, I decided I should probably not read any memoirs for a while. I just don't tend to usually like them. I also don't really like Paris Hilton, so again, very confused why I even picked this one up. Although I did give this one 2.5, so we're on to 2.5 star ratings now. Like, there were some bits that I found really interesting, but I just think like Paris Hilton's whole value system is completely at odds with mine, and so all the things that she was trying to emphasize, well, not all the things, but some of the things she was trying to emphasize I just found painful. And overall, I just thought the whole thing was lacking in focus. So even though some bits were really interesting, it would also then cover a whole bunch of other things that I wasn't interested in. Then we have The Atlas Complex by Oliver Blake. So this is the third book in the Atlas series by Oliver Blake, basically following this group of magic students who join the secret society of the Library of Alexandria and have access to all the magical knowledge in the world and make some really poor decisions with what to do with all of that. This is another one where I just feel like it was lacking in focus, but also lacking in structure. I think there was a good story in there, but the way it was told just isn't the way that I like stories to be told. And it was just too emotionally angsty for me, which I should have expected. And actually, this is another one where I knew it was coming out, but I purposefully didn't put it on my anticipated releases because I had a feeling that it wouldn't be for me. So I guess all these lowly rated ones are actually confirming some of my previous lessons about what books I should be anticipating. Then we had Long Chills and Caisto by Brandon Sanderson. So this was just a little surprise book that we got with the last secret project box as part of Brandon Sanderson's big secret project thing that he was doing last year. So it was kind of a surprise. That's why I wasn't anticipating it. Would I have anticipated it anyway? I don't know. but I only gave it 2.5 stars. It's kind of just a quirky sci-fi, and even though quirky sci-fis can be something I like, I haven't really been liking Brandon Sanderson's quirky humor type books lately. I feel like there was an exception lately, but I can't remember. Anyway, this was fine, but I think from the picture at the front, I was kind of hoping it would do something cooler with what it did do with the sci-fi. Like, I think the sci-fi concepts in here were cool, but it's such a short story, it didn't really get to explore them, and instead it was mostly just this weird guy who insists in talking like some kind of film noir detective, and even though it's a futuristic world, and I just didn't really like him. So this was a surprise, couldn't have anticipated it, but probably shouldn't have anyway. And in the future, if Brandon Sanderson is writing quirky funny books, I'm not going to put them on my anticipated releases. Then we have Witch King by Martha Wells. So this one I did actually at the end of the year put on my 5-star releases. So if I had known about it at the start of the year, I think I would have put it on my anticipated releases and then been really disappointed, because 2.5 stars, and that's maybe being generous, and also probably only because I ended up reading half of the book via audiobook and then deciding to start again. But having that information from that first pre-read was really helpful for my enjoyment of my second go through, because the way this book is structured, you just don't really have the information or any interest in the characters until at least halfway through to appreciate everything that's happening. And just overall, I think that structural problem, as well as just the way the character development was done, really hampered this book from achieving what it wanted to. And I've seen a lot of people disappointed in it. I mainly was excited about this because it's Martha Wells, and even though I haven't read all the Murderbot books, I have read the first chapter multiple times and haven't gotten to it for reasons of my own. Even though I really loved reading that first chapter every time I've read it. So I thought Martha Wells' writing was going to be amazing, but I think it just didn't carry across to the concept of Witch King. And I don't really know what lesson we could learn from this, because if there's an author whose previous work you've always liked, then why wouldn't you anticipate their future releases? I guess in this case you could say it's a completely different genre, so maybe that's something to be careful of. But also I think sometimes I'm just really excited to see my favorite authors try new genres, and I don't know if I can always hold myself back from anticipating them. I'm not sure if that's the lesson to learn. Okay, then we have One Girl in All the World by Kendara Blake. So I forget what the series is called, but this is like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Not a retelling, it's a canonical story in the world set after kind of the main TV show and all the follow-on comics and all of that stuff. So we're following the daughter of Willow, the witch from Buffy, and now because of things happening, she is not only a witch but also a slayer, and struggling with that situation while also trying to find out what happened to the rest of the slayers. So to be honest, after I read the first book, I decided I wasn't going to continue this series just because it felt a bit young for me, just really focused on teen issues, which if you know the original Buffy series, you know it was really focused on teen issues. The whole point was to use supernatural elements in fighting vampires as a metaphor for the different issues that you go through as a teen. So I don't think that it didn't do the right thing for a book in the Buffy world. I just think it's not what I want. And if we're honest, even though I really like Buffy and I have a lot of nostalgia for it, I think if I watched it for the first time, I probably wouldn't even like it. So I had decided that I wouldn't continue that series, but then my library had the second book. This is how I get sucked in all the time by my library having books that I've decided not to read. My library had it, so I got it. And you know what? It wasn't that bad. That's why I gave it 3 stars. 3 stars is an okay book. It wasn't amazing, but what we learned about what's happened to the Slayers did make me decide that I will continue the series. So the second book won me back. But I also think it was smart not to anticipate this release, because it could have very easily gone a different way. And even now, maybe it just worked out that I was in the right mood when I read that second book. We'll see how the third one goes. I'm going to be reading that soon. Okay, then we have God Killer by Hannah Kaner. So mostly, like a lot of people, I was only interested in this one because of the beautiful cover, but It did also have talk about one of the main characters being a god killer, and the way the gods work in this world is really interesting. Like, basically gods only exist if people believe in them, and so believing in gods has been made illegal. And like, that concept is really cool. And we also have this young girl, kind of forgotten. This young girl who has a god of white lies attached to her, and she's asked this god killer for help, and like, obviously this god killer kills gods, but if she kills the god attached to this young girl, it's not really clear what will happen to the young girl. And I had also heard like so many rave reviews of this book, so I went into it feeling very hopeful, and I did give it 3.5 stars because I thought it was written okay, and I thought a lot of the concepts were really interesting and somewhat well executed, but also a large amount of the book was just kind of these characters traveling together, and I was really bored. And also near the end, it's kind of like, surprise, two of these characters are kind of having a romance, and I hadn't seen any foundation for that and honestly wasn't interested in it at all. I just feel like the first book didn't give me enough of what it could have or what it had the potential to do, and I haven't heard great things about the second book, so now I'm kind of glad that I decided not to continue that series, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't put it on my anticipated releases. I think if you're mostly interested in a book because of the beautiful cover, it's a red flag. Then we have I Hate Fairyland Volume 5, Gert's Inferno by Scotty Young and Brett Bean. So I had actually thought the I Hate Fairyland series was finished with Volume 4 because there's quite a big gap between those two. So I didn't put this on my anticipated releases because I didn't even know it was coming out. Otherwise I probably would. And then maybe if I'd had a chance to like properly anticipate it and build up my expectations, I would have been more disappointed with it. I still gave it 3.5 stars. I still thought it was good, but it also was over very quickly and didn't have that much substance to it. So I Hate Fairyland basically follows this girl named Gert, and when she was a really young child, she was sucked through into fairyland and given the challenge to find the key back home, which was really meant to be a very quick task. Unfortunately, after 27 years, Gert still hadn't found the key, and in the meantime, she's just become incredibly violent, and she's traveling around fairyland just like reaping mayhem and destruction. And it's a really good contrast between like super cute bright colored fairyland things and like really gruesome gory blood and violence. So at the end of Volume 4, Gert was back on Earth, and then in Volume 5 she basically gets a chance to go back to fairyland, which she is interested in because she is not doing that great on Earth. So it was fun. I think the main lesson to learn from this one is that even if you think series are finished, you should keep checking because you never know when they might secretly continue and you don't even know about it. So then we have Unfamiliar Volume 2 by Hayley Newsome. I only read the first volume of Unfamiliar last year, so I wouldn't have been able to anticipate it. If I had read it, once again, I think I would have been anticipating it. And again, maybe I would have been more disappointed. To be honest, Volume 2 wasn't as good. It's still really cute. This series basically just follows this group of like really cute witchy girls, and they're struggling with like haunted houses and not being as good at magic as they would like to be, and like a curse. In the second volume we get the Fairy King. Like, it's really cute, and I love some of the art and the sense of humor. But yeah, Volume 2 wasn't as good, so I'm kind of glad I wasn't anticipating it because I still enjoyed Volume 2. I just didn't think it was as good. And sometimes you can enjoy things more if you haven't built them up too much in your head, you know? Okay, we're fully into the graphic novel section of these, I can see. So we also had Volumes 1 and 2 of The Cursed Princess Club released in 2023. I only picked up The Cursed Princess Club this year, 2024, via Webtoon. But if I had read that Webtoon before the 2023 releases of those books, I would have been super hyped for them getting a physical release, because that series is probably my most favorite thing I've read so far this year. Is that true? Maybe. And it's just a silly little webtoon about these princesses who are betrothed to marry these princes, but one of these princesses is not as stereotypically beautiful as the others, and the prince who is betrothed to marry her is quite disappointed, and she also ends up making friends with this cursed princess club, which is a bunch of princesses who have been cursed and then, unlike most of the fairy tales, haven't been able to get rid of their curses. Honestly, such a wonderful story, so funny, and so many wholesome messages and lessons, but also one that I worry that I oversell it when I talk about how much fun I had with it. So this was a recommendation that I got from my sister, so maybe the lesson we need to learn here is to ask my sister what books she's anticipating before I make my own list. Smart. Okay, then let's just group them all together. The next 3 books on the list are all ones related to the Babysitters Club books, which were these books that I read when I was in primary school about this group of babysitters, and there's also a spin-off series, the Babysitter's Little Sister series, which follows one of their little sisters. So we got Karen's Birthday, which I gave 4 stars, and then Marianne's Bad Luck Mystery and Claudia and the Bad Joke, which I also gave 4 stars, to be honest, for both these series because they're just so nostalgic to me, and also the art is really cute. And the stories are just like fun, wholesome stories with good lessons. Like, I just kind of give them 4 stars, have a good time with them. But I honestly can't tell you what your experience would be like with them if you didn't have that nostalgia attached. And like, they're not anything mind-blowing, which is why I think I don't normally put them on my anticipated releases list, because there's kind of a couple coming out every year for who knows how long, because there's hundreds of books that they could potentially adapt into these graphic novel versions that they've been doing. Then we had Mothkeeper by Kay O'Neill. So I know a lot of people were reading this around the start of last year, and I guess I must have just missed any kind of information that it was coming out, or I think maybe I would have been anticipating it, because this is by Kay O'Neill, who is a New Zealand author who just creates these beautiful children's graphic stories. In Mothkeeper, we're following this young person who is being trained to be a moth keeper, where basically they stay up at night and they take care of the moths. And the art is just beautiful. I kind of vaguely remember that I had some things about this that I didn't like, but all I remember now is the beautiful art, and I did give it 4 stars, so I really enjoyed it. And as I said, I would have been anticipating this, so this is one where maybe I just need to be better about checking all of the authors that I love. Like, I must have just not checked. I don't know. Then we have Fate of the Argosy by Sebastian de Castell. So this is another one where I thought the series was finished. From everything I'd seen, there was only 2 books listed in this series, which is, it is a spin-off of the original Spellslinger series, which was a 7-book series. And I felt like the second book in this Argosy series, where we go back and we get Furious Parfax's backstory in this world where there's like all these different cultures with different magic systems, and the Argosy are like these traveling nomads. And I actually like the Argosy series better than the original Spellslinger series, but I thought it was a duology, and to be honest, I was quite happy with it being a duology. I didn't end up liking this 3rd book as much as the previous 2, although it did still have some good elements. But as I said, I was satisfied with the 2 I got, and now that I've had the 3rd one, I feel like I'm more aware of the distance between Furious Parfax at the end of that 3rd book and the Furious Parfax we meet in the original series. And so now I'm actually more frustrated that there isn't more story being told. And everywhere I've seen it listed as a trilogy, but now I'm like, is it a trilogy, or is there going to be some more surprise books at some point? I don't feel like the Argosy series has been as popular as the Spellslinger series, so I feel like it might be the end. I kind of wish I hadn't found out that there was a 3rd book and I could have just been satisfied with it as a duology, as I was when I thought that's what it was. So now I'm doubting the lesson that I made up that was like, keep checking in case there's more books and series that you think are finished, because maybe sometimes it's nicer just to like leave them as finished. Even though I did give the Fate of the Argosy 4 stars, like I still thought it was really good, but it also left me unsatisfied with the series as a whole. Then we have The Adventures of Amina El-Sarafi by S.A. Chakraborty. No, I think this was under the name Shannon Chakraborty. So this is a really hyped book about this woman, an older woman who used to be a pirate. Then things happen that make her need to get her old pirating crew back together and go on a bit of a exciting adventure. There were some parts of this series that I really liked, other parts that I didn't really like, and the reason why I hadn't been anticipating this is because I didn't really like the Daevabad trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty, and so for that reason I thought, well, probably I won't like something new by her. And I think the bits that I didn't like were the bits that kind of link into the Daevabad trilogy. But I know that people who like the Daevabad trilogy, of which there's a lot, I know those people were really excited about those connections. So it does make me a little bit concerned for going forward in the series, because I worry that those connections will be strengthened rather than what I would prefer is just to stay away from all of that and do something completely new. So should I anticipate the second book in that series or not? I still gave this 4 stars. I still thought it was really good. I just feel like there's a lot of unknowns for me about that second book. Then lastly, we have Dark One Forgotten by Brandon Sanderson and Dan Wells. So this is audiobook only, which I'm pretty sure I knew this was coming out at the start of 2023, but because it was one of these audiobook only things where I knew it was going to be like a graphic audio where it's like a full cast performance, and I often don't like those. I find a lot of the music really distracting. I don't like the way they sometimes get rid of dialogue tags, and the way that sometimes the voices of the narrator and when the narrator speaks aren't the same. There's a bunch of things that often annoy me about those. So I thought to myself, I'll wait till it comes out physically and then maybe I'll decide if I'm excited about it. But then throughout the year, I got very invested in getting to Series 0, and Dark One Forgotten is like a kind of spin-off from the Dark One graphic novel that I'd read, so I decided I would read it for the completionist in me, and I ended up really liking it. Even though I don't think a lot of people who like kind of Brandon Sanderson's typical epic fantasy stuff will necessarily like this. It's definitely targeted at a slightly younger audience, but it does have some really cool ideas in it, and I kind of liked the humor in this, even though I earlier said some of Brandon Sanderson's humor doesn't fly with me, but maybe Dan Wells's humor is something I don't mind. So I should say this is like a audiobook thing that's kind of done as like a 6-part podcast, and basically it's the main character is creating a podcast as she tries to investigate what happened with this famous violinist that she's discovered, where this girl went missing and then everybody just seems to have forgotten about her, and it gets interesting and fantastical. So it was a lot of fun. Should I have been anticipating it? Maybe, because even though I complain about these kind of audiobook productions, I did like Brandon Sanderson's the originals that he did with Mary Robinette Kowal, which is probably similar-ish. So maybe if he does some more stuff like that in the future, I should anticipate it. So that's it. The highest rating for all of these unanticipated 2023 releases was 4 stars. If we compare it to my anticipated releases, you can see that I got some 5 stars there, and just in general, the anticipated releases did get higher ratings and we had more complete misses with these unanticipated releases. So if I look at my average rating for my unanticipated releases, it's only 3.32, which is just slightly under my average rating for the whole year of 3.34, whereas the average rating for my anticipated releases was 3.66. So like not massive differences here, but it does seem like my anticipated releases are a little bit higher than these other categories. So maybe I didn't do terribly at picking my anticipated releases. But let me know, how do you go about picking out what new releases are coming up that you think you're going to really love and that you really want to make sure you get to? And of course, if you've read any of the books that I talked about in this video, I'd also love to chat with you about those down in the comments. Do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.